Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, denizens of the field of education. My name is Professor McCoolGuy, and welcome to my show. Today we are going to venture into the topics of attachment, authoritarian and authoritative parenting, and how it will affect your classroom, the signs and effects of child maltreatment, and what you should do if you are under the impression that a child is being abused. And we will address how socialization affects your students and how some may go under a culture shock. First, let us delve into attachment. Attachment commences at the infant stage. When a caregiver provides ample care to the infant, they develop a secure attachment and tend to grow into self-confident, independent children that can adapt to new environments easily, primarily your classroom. Then, there are those who do not receive a proper form of attachment from their caregivers, forming an insecure attachment. We tend to see students who have developed an insecure attachment to be very dependent, immature, and disruptive. This now will bring us to the topic of authoritative and authoritarian parenting. As an instructor, you should expect your students to come from a multitude of different household environments and upbringings. Authoritative parenting is a very good mixture of love and support, tied in with establishing rules and expectations the child should uphold. In Western cultures especially, it is deemed as the most favorable parenting style, and it should truly reflect how you, the instructor, should proceed to run your classroom. Let us start with this scenario. It is your first day at a new school and you are not really sure what to expect. You walk into your classroom and see all of your students calmly engaged with each other. I will use myself as an example. First, introduce yourself. Hello class, I am your teacher, Professor McCoolGuy. I'm looking forward to teaching you this school year. Let them know all of your expectations of them and encourage them to not be afraid to ask you questions. Make sure that you tell them, you and I are going to work hard in order for you to succeed. That way your students develop a determination to do well, but do not feel intimidated by you and can approach you if they have issues. Well, now let us talk about authoritarian parenting. What? You already know all about authoritarian parenting? Hey look guys, it's kind of in my contract to address this form of parenting too, okay? So just bear with me. Well, anywho, authoritarian parenting mostly goes as follows. These are the rules, and you must follow them. No compromises, and no further discussion about them. It is much more strict than authoritative parenting, and is much more commonly seen amongst families of impoverished backgrounds. Being aware of the techniques of this parenting style can come in handy when dealing with the types of students I will depict for you in the following example. Okay, here we go. You arrive into your classroom on the first day of school. It is a war zone. The students are jumping on top of their desks, throwing their backpacks out of the window, writing profanity on the board. It is absolute mayhem. Actually, I'm not sure why these students keep arriving in your room before you, but let us just pretend they will for the sake of our example. Remember all the techniques I explained to you in the last scenario? Well, throw that right out of that same window those backpacks were thrown out of, because you will most definitely have to initiate this classroom with an authoritarian perspective. Grab your classroom's attention by giving a very stern and clear introduction. Lay out the rules of your classroom without any room for negotiation, and let them know that you mean business. Hopefully, over time, your classroom will become more easily managed, and you'll be able to bring in some authoritative methods upon your teaching and let them know that you do truly care about your students and want them to succeed. By bringing in a good balance of authoritative and authoritarian practices in your form of teaching, you should be able to manage almost any form of classroom that may be given to you. How can you determine whether you should run your class in an authoritative or authoritarian manner? Let's use these two students to set up a scenario, Arthur and Wayne. Arthur grew up in an impoverished neighborhood and can be a troublemaker if he sees no control being held in the classroom. Wayne is a very reserved student who is a descendant of Chinese immigrants. He is a top performer in your class, but lately he hasn't been doing too well. One day, still early in the school year, Arthur interrupts the class and yells, "Hey, Professor McCoolGuy, I think what you're teaching us is a bunch of baloney." You can tell he is trying to get his classmates engaged in the ruckus as well. Take an authoritarian approach to shut him down. "Arthur, you have to raise your hand to ask a question, and your statement was extremely disrespectful to me and your fellow classmates. Take a seat and do not make another interruption, or you will have to face the consequences. Actually, that sounds a bit hardcore, but you should be serious and stern. And if he continues to be disruptive, then follow through with your promise of a consequence. You have to gain control of your class at an early point, or you will never make progress with the students' learning. No exceptions and no negotiations. Let's talk about the other student, Wayne. This would take place maybe halfway through the school year, and you notice he's performing poorly on his last few assignments. You approach him after class and ask him what's going on. "Hey Wayne, I notice you haven't been turning in your assignments lately."
Sorry, Professor. I've been pretty stressed out lately. My parents put a lot of pressure on me to do well at school, but sometimes I feel like I get set back when I do poorly, and then it becomes so hard to catch up.
Well, I understand your parents wanting you to do great, and although it is very tough, I can help you by giving you strategies to manage your time and very effective studying habits that can help you improve your grades. Don't forget to thank your students for opening up to you so they feel welcome to come again if they need help with any future endeavors. Finally, today I will talk about child maltreatment. Most children will come into your classroom with fairly normal lives, and they look like you expect they would. Clean clothes, regularly socializes, performs well in class. But if you run into a scenario where you are under the suspicion that a child you know might be experiencing child abuse, it is your responsibility to contact your primary child abuse source and report the incident you witnessed. Usual signs of child maltreatment are constant dirty and torn clothing, always hungry, extremely poor performance in class, bruises or scars, and very irritable and antisocial behavior. After you report what you see, approach the student and try to start a friendly conversation. We never know what may be going on at home, but the least we can do is try to provide a safe and secure environment for these children in our classrooms. Socialization is basically the effort of members of a person's cultural group trying to make them adopt and grow accustomed to beliefs and behaviors the group believes in. When a said person from this culture encounters something that contradicts or is vastly different from what they know, they are bound to experience culture shock. Believe it or not, some teachers would try to deny seeing a child as being abused due to maybe believing that the child may just get into fights with other kids or maybe gets themselves into accidents often. But why, you may ask? The possibilities are endless, but a common reason is that they don't want to bring attention of the students suspected of child maltreatment to their fellow classmates. It can cause a severe cultural shock to these students who aren't aware of these events going on based on their culture, and it could cause more problems for them, the student of interest, and you as the teacher. To wrap up this presentation, I would like to leave you with a few helpful resources that may better your understanding of the topics I've explained to you today. The first is the textbook Educational Psychology, Developing Learners by Jeanne, Ellis, Ormrod. We use this book to retrieve the topics we have presented to you today. It also holds more detailed explanations of the topics as well. The second is an article found on www.theguardian.com. It goes into great detail on some of the other reasons teachers may really question if a student is being abused or not. The third is an article found on www.parentsleague.org, and it explains very thoroughly the best methods of parenting when involved authoritative versus authoritarian practices.